I want you to think about a really good day that you have enjoyed. Perhaps one particular day you might describe as your best day ever. And I want you to think about sharing that briefly with someone sitting nearby. Maybe you know the person next to you. Maybe you share the best day ever. Maybe it was a day you enjoyed together. Maybe you're sitting next to someone you don't know and you need to start by telling them your name and so on. And then I want you to rather subjectively and arbitrarily score their best day out of 10. So there's no rules, no regulations about what makes a best day. It's up to you to decide and just give them a score and then let them listen to your best day. So have a little think. A really, really good day. Could be a day that you've enjoyed recently. Maybe it's hard to choose a very best day, but a really good one. Okay? Off you go. There's been a wonderful buzz in the church as everyone has been reminiscing about their best days. Did anyone score someone else's best day as 10 out of 10? Anyone get a 10 out of 10? Wow. No, don't get started again. Don't get started. You can come back to this at the end of the service. A great conversation starter for over coffee. Let's do some hands up. So whose best day was their wedding day? We've got some wedding days there. Yeah. Whose best day was the day that their child was born? Yeah. Whose best day was seeing Crystal Palace win the FA Cup? A few shakes of heads. Would anyone like to tell us their best day or the best day that they've just heard? Because it really was a 11 out of 10 kind of moment. Yes, please. A granddaughter getting married, yeah. 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 So despite his Parkinson's, he was captivated by the wedding. Beautiful. And it's written all over your face as you describe that day, how special it was. And some of us even burst into applause as we heard it. Any other really fabulous days people want to share? Yeah, Sarah.
Jamie's passing out praise.
Yes. So Jamie, as we know, is serving in the armed forces. We're all a little bit worried about that at the moment, Jamie, to be honest. But we're incredibly proud as a church family that you're serving in that way. And of course, Sarah and John, incredibly proud to have been there at that passing out parade as well. Yeah, lots of nods, lots of empathy, understanding. Important days, powerful days, great days. Today we're going to talk about a great day that was shared by Jesus with his three closest disciples, Peter, James, and John. I wonder whether you've ever thought, I wish I was one of the disciples. I wish I'd been able to actually meet Jesus, to actually see him, to talk to him, to hold his hand, to sit with him. What an incredible experience that must have been. We're going to hear about an experience that these three closest disciples had with Jesus. They went up a mountain, and they were up this mountain with Jesus, and not only was Jesus there, but Moses and Elijah were there as well. A best day ever. We're not sure exactly where this took place. Kevin Crosswell put this map up the other day. I love a good map, a map of the Bible. When I was young and sermons were boring, I used to look at the maps in the Bible to keep me sort of interested and entertained. I love a good map. Now, we know that where Kevin was talking about the walk that Jesus did, he was going through Samaria and he was making his way up towards Caesarea Philippi. Caesarea Philippi is where he asked his disciples, who do the people say I am? And Peter was asked specifically, and who do you say I am? And he said, you're the Messiah. Well done, Peter. He gets an A star for his homework for once. He got it right for once. And he's the top of the class. And Jesus says, brilliant, Peter. You are the rock that I'm going to build my church upon. You're going to have the keys to the kingdom of heaven because you get it. Straight afterwards, Jesus is then talking about the fact he's going to be going back down to Jerusalem, where he's going to get arrested, where he's going to get beaten up and tortured, and he's going to be killed. And Peter says, no. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to stop that from happening. And he gets an E- for his homework. He didn't get it after all. And Jesus said to him, get behind me, Satan. It's a bit of a roller coaster for Peter, to say the least. Then straight after Caesarea Philippi, straight after that moment where Jesus recognizes him as the Messiah and then exposes the fact that he doesn't get what Jesus has come to do, Jesus takes these three closest disciples up a mountain. Now, it could be Mount Tabor. That's the traditional place that people think the Transfiguration took place. It's about 2,000 feet high, this mountain, but scholars today think it's an unlikely setting because at the top of that mountain was a fortress. So it wouldn't have really provided the secluded spot that Jesus would have wanted for this moment. This is bad news for the Basilica of the Transfiguration, which is up the top of Mount Tabor. But it could have been Mount Tabor. The more likely setting, scholars think, is Mount Hermon, which is 9,000 feet up, much more remote, much more barren, both climbable in a day. So Jesus took them up one of these two mountains. You can see Mount Hermon is just above Caesarea Philippi on this map, whereas Mount Tabor is down back into Galilee. Both have fantastic views over Galilee. But of course, it doesn't actually matter where it took place. The disciples weren't there for a view or planning a place to build a basilica in the future. They were there for a much more important experience. And this walk is the next in our series on the walks of Jesus. It's the walk of glory, the mountain of transfiguration. Now, this incredible story appears in several places in the Bible. Generally, when something appears several times, it's clearly gathering more importance. And it appears in Matthew 17, which is the version of the story that we're going to look at in detail. And I'm going to read it from the New Testament for Everyone version, which is the version that Tom Wright has written of the New Testament. It also appears in Mark's Gospel, in Luke's Gospel. Interestingly, Peter reflects on this moment of his life in his second epistle. It's in 2 Peter 1, 16 to 18, where he looks back on this experience and talks about what happened up that mountain. And many people think it's also mentioned very briefly in John's Gospel in chapter 1, verse 14. So I encourage you to look at these maybe at another time or in a bit where I'm a bit boring and you want to just sort of do your own adventure. So here we go. This is Matthew 17, a best day ever for these three disciples. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and James's brother John and led them off up a high mountain by themselves. There he transformed in front of them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. Then, astonishingly, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, and they were talking with Jesus. In the other Gospels, it talks about their clothes being whiter than any launderer could make them. And it makes it very clear that all three of them were shining white. It wasn't just Jesus who was shining bright. It's not because Jesus is the Son of God. It's not because he's divine that he can shine like this. All three of them can. What we're getting is a snapshot of what heavenly bodies are going to be like. Moses and Elijah have died and are now in the new kingdom. And at this moment, the curtain is pulled back and we get to see Moses and Elijah dressed in their heavenly clothes, and Jesus also dressed in those heavenly clothes. We see all three of them in their glory. Moses and Elijah are talking with Jesus. I don't know if you've watched The Chosen, but interestingly, in The Chosen, they don't show the Transfiguration. It's disappointment to me. I would love to have seen them do it. But they don't do it. They do show elsewhere Jesus talking with Old Testament figures. There's one later on, just before he's about to be arrested, where he's talking with David. And it's a lovely idea that Jesus has this ability to be able to speak to those who've gone before him. Peter just had to say something. Master, he said to Jesus, it's wonderful for us to be here. If you want, I'll make 3 shelters here. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. I've always loved Peter, as he always says these ridiculous things and gets things wrong in such a fabulous way. I find it entirely reassuring. So you're on the mountain, you've got Jesus with you, you've got Moses and Elijah, and your big suggestion is to make some tents. Now, this is such an incredible story. There are people that think maybe it's not true. But this sort of line being placed in it is one of those things that Bible scholars would say, that proves it definitely is true. This has all the characteristics of an eyewitness account. Like, if this was just being carefully curated afterwards, this is not something you would leave in to help convince people. Our leading apostle, the one on whom we're going to build the church, says, I know, let's build some tents. Like, this is not something which is going to fit. And yet, it is recorded. He said this. Now, I've been doing a lot of research about the story of the Transfiguration, and perhaps it's not just totally random that Peter says this. There's a very strong chance that this event is happening about 6 months before Jesus dies. That's what people think. And in the Jewish calendar, about 6 months before Passover, they celebrate the Feast of Sukkot, the Feast of the Tabernacles, where the Jews would build shelters, little tents like this. Now, this is a tent from modern-day Jewish family. Next to their house, they build a tent for the Feast of the Sukkot. It's the Feast of the Tabernacles. And for a week, in late summer, early autumn, Jews build little tents and live outside for 7 days. It's written about in Leviticus 23, if you want to look it up later. Or now, if you're finding it boring, something just to distract yourself. They build these tents for 7 days, and they deliberately leave gaps in the ceilings of them so that they can see the stars at night, so they can see God's kingdom. It reminds them, of course, that as Jesus led them out of Egypt, they lived in tents for 40 years and 40 years they were traveling, living in tents. It reminds them of that process. It reminds them that God was with them through that process powerfully in the form of a cloud, in the form of a pillar of fire. that God was with them and that he had a plan to lead them into the promised land, into this wonderful kingdom. It reminds them of God being close to them. And of course, maybe Peter is thinking of these things as he's having this experience. Maybe he's thinking, should we celebrate Sukkot together with Elijah and Moses? Maybe he's just trying to, in his own way, trying to show, look, I want another A star here. I have done my homework. I do know what the Old Testament says. I do understand the messianic prophecies. This is it, isn't it? This is it. This is when you're coming. It says in the Old Testament prophecies that Elijah must come first. Elijah's here. This is the moment, isn't it? So let's celebrate it in the traditional way by building these shelters. But of course, Peter's getting it wrong again. The purpose of being up this mountain is not to capture this moment. It's not to try and capture this glory. And it's not to avoid the ultimate destiny of where Jesus is going. So Peter is probably getting a C for this comment overall. I love this bit. While Peter was still speaking, a bright cloud overshadowed them. Then there came a voice out of the cloud. "This is my dear son," said the voice, "and I'm delighted with him. Pay attention to him." Now, teachers will know what I'm talking about. Sometimes a student is speaking to you and they're speaking such rubbish, you have to interrupt them. Some of you will have friends like this who are talking such nonsense. The only polite and kind thing to do is actually just to say, look, I'm going to stop you right there. I sometimes have meetings with parents where they've been completely deluded about what their son or daughter has done. And they're talking at length about what their son and daughter really did in this situation. And yet I know I've got CCTV of the thing that happened. And so they're talking and I'm thinking, it's not polite to interrupt, but you know what? I'm going to, because you're going to regret going on and on and on like this. And this is what happens in this situation. God interrupts Peter. Whilst Peter is still talking about his plan to build tents, God says, no, stop. Actually stop now, Peter. He interrupts him. A bright cloud overshadows them and a voice comes out of the cloud. "This is my dear son," said the voice. I mean, wow. Best day ever. Jesus is there. Elijah's there. Moses is there. And we're hearing the voice of God. Now, this is very similar to what God said at the baptism of Jesus, isn't it? "This is my dear son with whom I'm well pleased." It's very similar to what God said out of the thunder and the clouds as Jesus is standing outside the temple just before he gets arrested. "This is my son, listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and they're scared out of their wits. Jesus came up and touched them. "Get up," he said, "and don't be afraid." And when they raised their eyes, they saw nobody except Jesus, all by himself. Jesus is standing there with Elijah and Moses. Moses is representing the law, representing the Old Testament, the Torah. Elijah is there representing the prophets. They're in their dazzling white clothes. But when they look up, those two have gone, because actually it's all about Jesus. It's not about the other two. It's not about building tents. This is about the Son of God. This is the Son of God, and you need to listen to him. If you take nothing else away from this service today, it's that line, pay attention to him. The whole point of going up this mountain is God is saying, pay attention to my son. Pay attention to him. It says in the Luke account that Jesus is talking to Moses about his departure. The actual word isn't departure, it's exodus. So Jesus talks to Moses about his exodus. He's talking about Jesus' exodus, because Moses knows a thing or two about exodus. Jesus talks to him and says, this is my plan. This is what I'm doing. This is what my exodus is going to be like. Now, for first century Jews, hearing this story, hearing that that's what happened up the mountain, hearing the word exodus will be a very clear signal of what is happening here. They'll have very clear understanding of the incredible exodus that Moses led. The plagues, the incredible parting of the sea, the incredible escape, the incredible exodus through the desert. And they will understand the symmetry of the exodus that Jesus is planning. An escape, not from a place or from a Pharaoh, but an escape from sin. A promised land, not just a new place to live, but a new kingdom, a new way of living. Now, all the mountains in the Bible, as far as I can see, are passing on this incredible message to this moment, this best day ever for three fabulous disciples who get this incredible moment. In 2022, it was the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. And Joe and I were at the Isle of Wight, at the Needles. You know the Needles on the Isle of Wight? That's where we were celebrating the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. The sun went down, it was dark, and we were looking across at the mainland, and we could see beacons being lit along the mainland. And there was a message of light being passed all around Britain. And we were sort of at the bottom of Britain waiting for the beacon to get past. So we could see it being lit in Southampton, see it being lit in Portsmouth. And then we lit it, not me personally, but we as the people of the Isle of Wight, lit our beacon. There was a message being sent that the Queen was celebrating her Platinum Jubilee. I loved it. In a way, that's what's happening here in the Bible. A message is being sent all the way through from mountaintop to mountaintop to mountaintop of what the plan is. Now, if you're interested in this and you want to do some homework, I have here 3 sheets which I've typed up, which talk about all of the mountains and the message that's being passed across. You could come and take a picture of it on your phone and look them up. If you're new to faith, and the Bible's quite tricky, isn't it? It's quite long, and there's some quite tough bits in it. Quite a good way to get a basic grip of what is going on is look at all the mountain stories. I've got a lot of them listed here, mountain to mountain to mountain, and what the message is. So, for example, the last time I was preaching, I was talking about Abraham up the mountain with Isaac. And we were learning that Abraham up that mountain can see the resurrection. That's why he's confident that he can sacrifice his son, because he has seen the resurrection. He sees what God is capable of. He gets it. 2,000 years before the Transfiguration, Abraham is going up mountains and seeing what it's all about, seeing the resurrection that is to come. And the symbolism each time is just fantastic. For example, here you've got a beloved son being taken up a mountain. You've got a father. You've got wood for a sacrifice. You've got the message that God is going to provide. Mountain number 1. Look at some of the mountains that Moses had. Moses at Mount Sinai. There's a burning bush. There's an incredible experience of God. Remember when Moses used to go up the mountain, he couldn't see God. He wasn't allowed to see God's face. God's face is just too much. So he was allowed to see the back of God. That's what he saw. He saw the back of God. That was as much as he could cope with. So isn't it amazing? On this mountain, Moses is talking face to face with the Son of God. What an incredible resolution to what Moses always wanted. But Moses went up the mountains and spoke with God, listened to God, received the entire law, not just the 10 Commandments, but the entire law to share with God's people. In Deuteronomy 34, of course, when Moses dies, he's up the mountain and he gets to see the promised land. He doesn't get to go, but he gets to see the promised land. And here we are with Peter, James, and John seeing the promised land, seeing what Jesus has in store. Do you see the message is being passed along all the time? When the 10 Commandments are received, we've got fire, we've got cloud, we've got people that are scared, fear, we've got law given that people can't approach. Later on, Peter, James, and John can approach. A new law is given. The cloud is there again. What about Elijah's mountains? Mount Carmel, when he goes up and he has that challenge with the people who are worshipping Baal, and he sets the challenge, doesn't he? He says, right, you with your 300 priests, you try and set fire to that sacrifice. Then I'll do it here. Again, we've got wood, we've got sacrifice, we've got water being poured on, and the fire comes. And then after that experience, Moses feels frightened and deflated and scared and worried. And God takes him to Mount Horeb, where he's not in the fire. He's not in the wind. He's in a quiet whisper. But again, in Mount Carmel, you think about the fire coming and false gods being exposed. Here, at the Transfiguration, the true God is exposed. The Son of God is made clear. The plan is clarified. And then Jesus himself loved going up a mountain. When he was tempted, he was in a wilderness, and he showed faithfulness that Adam was unable to show. He gave a new law on the Sermon of the Mount, Matthew 5-7. Moses' law needs to pass away. A new law is coming, the Transfiguration itself. And then after the Transfiguration, we've got really what it's all about. We've got that there's going to be the ultimate mountain in Matthew 27, where Jesus is going to die. We've got the chapter before that, where he's in the Mount of Olives in the Garden of Gethsemane, and Jesus is in anguish. All of these mountains are telling God's story. And when Jesus is up the mountain, he is looking ahead, as Abraham did 2,000 years before, to what it's all about. Now, of course, James and John and Peter don't want to think about this. They'd like it to be more like this. They'd like Jesus to be on a throne, ruling a new kingdom, and James and John want to sit either side, don't they? They want to sit right and left. They even ask Jesus a couple of chapters later in Matthew 20. In fact, in Matthew's version, they get their mum to ask. Would it be okay if my sons sit at your right and left? And Jesus is saying, you don't know what you're asking. Being on my right and left as I come into my kingdom looks like this. You don't know what you're... Could you drink the cup that I'm going to drink? Yes, we can. They naively respond. Another E- type response. Jesus is saying, The people that are going to be on my left and right have already been ordained. My Father in heaven has already chosen who's going to sit on my left and right. It's going to be two criminals. The mountains pass on the story of what it's all about. And when we get to this mountain, this is what we're really seeing here, is the most fantastic foreshadowing of what it's all about. That there is an incredible message here. Now, I've been reading this book by Tom Wright, Matthew for Everyone, and he sums this up really, really well in his book. I recommend this to you if you're interested in learning more about some of these walks and really getting into the detail of it. He says, the scene at the Transfiguration offers a strange parallel and contrast to the crucifixion. So if you're going to meditate on one, you might like to hold the other in your mind as well, as a sort of backdrop. Here on the mountain is Jesus revealed in glory. There on the hill outside Jerusalem is Jesus revealed in shame. Here his clothes are shining white. There they've been stripped off and soldiers have gambled for them. Here he's flanked by Moses and Elijah, two of Israel's greatest heroes, representing the law and the prophets. There he's flanked by two brigands, representing the level to which Israel has sunk in rebellion against God. Here a bright cloud overshadows the scene. There darkness comes upon the land. Here, Peter blurts out how wonderful it all is. There, Peter's hiding in shame, denying he even knows Jesus. Here, a voice from God declares that this is his wonderful Son. There, a pagan soldier declares in surprise that this really is God's Son. The mountaintop explains the hilltop and vice versa. Perhaps we only really understand either of them when we see it side by side with the other. Learn to see the glory in the cross. Learn to see the cross in the glory. And you will have begun to bring together the laughter and the tears of the God who hides in the cloud, the God who is known in the strange person of Jesus himself. This story is, of course, about being surprised by the power, love, and beauty of God. But the point of it is that we should learn to recognize that same power, love, and beauty within Jesus and listen, and to listen for it in his voice, not least when he tells us to take up the cross and follow him. Their best day ever, maybe, is equipping them for what is to come. I read a couple of weeks ago that the best moment in your life is actually now. This bit, right now. Not what's happened in the past. The past is gone. You can't get it back. And not in the future, because the future never comes. The future's always over there. The best moment is now, because this is the only moment you've got. And more importantly, this is the only moment you've got where God is with you. God is with you right now. He was with you in the past. He will be with you in the future. But in terms of actual communion with God, in terms of a mountaintop experience, it has to be this one. Because this is the one where he is with you. He's with you now. If you can feel your heartbeat, you're feeling God walking around in your heart. He's with you right now. What are you going to do with this moment? Is this a moment to be going up the mountain? Are you going to use this moment to find some space, find some silence, start writing a journal? Oh, look, we are in church. We're going up. Is it a mountaintop moment where you are listening? This is my son. Listen to him. Christianity is not self-help. It's obedience to a voice. Podcast, YouTube, social media will only ever get you so far. The Bible has God's words for you. Or is it time to come down? Jesus had been telling the disciples they needed to take up their cross and follow him. He then takes them up the mountain. The mountain moment was a temporary moment to help prepare them for what was to come, to help prepare them for Jerusalem. He knew the difficulties ahead. Could they share his cup? Could they cope with his baptism? Well, actually, yes, they could. We believe Peter was crucified. He shared the same cup. Tradition says Peter chose to be crucified upside down in an even more cruel way. James also killed for his faith. The wonderful mountaintop experience didn't mean that life was then easy, didn't mean that everything was going to go their way. It was preparing them for Jerusalem. It was preparing them for Jesus' resurrection. It was preparing them for taking up their own cross. The mountain is not the destination. The point isn't to have a lovely time at church. The point isn't to make church as marvelous as possible and have as many lovely times as possible. The point is to go up the mountain to be prepared for what we're called to do. John lived a life of exile and persecution. Sometimes the cost is harsh and sharp and quick. Sometimes the cost just goes on and on and on and on. The walk of glory isn't the point. The point is to be prepared. Mountains are not escapes, they are preparation. The purpose of glory is not comfort, it's courage. The disciples needed courage for Jerusalem and beyond. I wonder what you need it for today. As the band come up, I want us to spend a moment thinking about what we need courage for. Heavenly Father, we all need courage. We're all facing difficulties. Let us not be falling into the same trap as Peter and thinking that we can set up camp in church, up our mountain, and avoid the challenges that lie ahead. You told us to take up our cross and follow you. Lord, whatever challenges face us in the week ahead, we thank you that you will go with us into those challenges. And that some of us have great, huge, difficult challenges to face. We all have the challenge of sharing this fabulous, best day ever good news with those around us. Help us to take that challenge. Help us to share it, to believe it, to know it, to understand it, and be equipped to share it with those around us. Amen.